Good evening and welcome to the Fort Smith City Board of Directors study session on this October 15th of 2024. This time we will go right to the agenda. Mr. Dingman, you're recognized for the first item.
Thank you, Mayor. To start things off tonight, we'll start with our Chief Financial Officer, Andy Richards, who has a presentation of the proposed 2025 budget to distribute to the board.
200 for the pro shop, and there's your left hand.
Yeah, okay.
Good evening. We did distribute the budget documents. They're next to your agendas. The format is similar to what we did last year. The large binder is all the detail, line item detail to support the program expenditures. The smaller bound book is the summary of all the programs and the 4 operating budgets for general fund, street maintenance, water and sewer, and sanitation. So, so this will be what we, kind of how we normally do our budget process. This is the base budget. Basically, a repeat of what we did last year. And of course, Carl will bring new needs at a later date for you to discuss. Also, the capital improvement plans, they're not in this document. This is just the operating funds. Of course, you'll be discussing most of those capital improvement plans tonight, and then the remaining ones at the next session. And so those documents were included in the agenda. I think probably the only other comment I want to make to just point out to you that for the water and sewer, the 2025 budget, the revenues, we have incorporated what we were going to propose as the rate increases for water and sewer. And so you'll see, good operating results for the 25 budget for water and sewer because we've gone ahead and what we're showing is the proposed water and sewer increases are built into those revenues. I think everything else is just kind of same as usual, status quo, and appreciate your time and efforts that you spend looking over the 1,200 pages or however much we generated today for you guys to review this part of the budget process. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for? Okay. Director LaVon Martin.
I will have some questions at a later date, so, okay.
I anticipate that, yes.
Anything else? Okay. If not, thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Andy, don't go anywhere.
Item number 2.
Andy will also introduce our topic of the departmental service objective review for 2025.
Yeah, so we, this is also part of the budget process. And I think we tried to bring this to you earlier. We typically do this a little bit earlier in the process, but I think, the agendas are full. And so the presentation of the departmental service objectives kind of got kicked, but they were included in the agenda package. So these are considered, part of the budget process. The departments early on put together these reports outlining the service objectives for the 2025 year, also reviewing the 2024 survey objectives and the outcomes, and also any key performance indicators that they report. You get an update on that. So like I said, all the departments submit those to us, and then we assemble those and distribute those to you. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Any questions on that item? Director LaVon Martin.
Yes, the only thing I would comment on is, we have not had a strategic planning meeting yet for 2024. And so, since we haven't, I think it's worth a look back at the 2023 strategic objectives and make sure for those that it's applicable that those are considered in the service objectives. Now, obviously, something like prioritizing the needs of government versus the wants of government, which is number 4, I mean, that doesn't really apply. But net blight is one that it does apply. Public-private partnerships, how we're doing that, and it could be that we're doing it. Strengthening relationships with federal and state agencies, I'm not sure we really have done a lot on that. I haven't seen a plan to increase water supply and pressure. I haven't seen anything on that. So I just would ask that those be considered at the point when this is finalized for inclusion with the budget, if that's appropriate. Okay?
Okay. Anything else? Okay. If not, we'll go to item 3.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 3 is the presentation of the first half of our departments that provide capital improvement plans.
Okay, so I didn't realize we were going to do that first. I do have some questions on the service objectives. Okay? 3 or 4, not a lot, but 3 or 4.
Okay, you're good. Go ahead. Who do you need to talk to?
First, Lance.
Okay.
So Lance, when I look at the key performance indicators on page 54, I felt like the goals for 2025 are fairly modest. And I guess I would like to know your thoughts on that, and whether you have maybe some further action as you get more information to perhaps revise these to more maybe a more aggressive posture, in light of the fact that we all know that on SSOs we get fines, and we're all, you I know especially, but the rest of us chime right in with you on trying to do whatever we can to reduce those fines, and SSOs is one way to do that. So I'd appreciate any comments or thoughts you have on page 54.
Director Morgan, we certainly can look at that and reduce that. Normally,
well, now I want to make it clear, I'm not directing you to do that. I mean, I don't have the authority to do that. I just want you in your position, important position, to consider, okay, what's the best we can do, and should we shoot for that?
yeah. So the best, what your goal is, what the goal would be is 0. But I actually took a class put out by both the American Water Works Association and the Water Environment Federation, which is kind of the wastewater environmental side, on doing KPIs for water and wastewater utilities. And normally what is a standard practice is you set a KPI and you make that KPI where it may not be met. So if you go back and look, these are the same KPI numbers that were done in 19, 20, 21, 22, or actually I'll take that back, 20 through current, because that's basically when I took over. And last year was the first year we actually met those KPIs. So number one, it shows we are making progress because it was trending down. But the thing is normally you would look at a 3-year period where you've met those before you would determine the trend, the statistical trend, to readjust those. However, I can go back, look at where we were for the last several years, see what the statistical trend downward is, and adjust those based on that. Because we did meet them last year. Right now, and this is as of today, we still have 2.5 months left for total, and this is, remember, this is SSOs per 100 miles of line, and we have about 550 miles of sanitary sewer pipe. We are at 18.2 SSOs per 100 mile, and that is for total. 14.2 for dry weather SSOs, and apparently I'm going to say that 4.1 should have been 4.0 when I did that. I believe I put in the wrong number. It is an actual 4.0 for wet weather per 100 miles. So that we can definitely look at a downward trend and adjust that accordingly.
Well, it definitely shows progress. The numbers you called out are showing better than.
Can you turn your mic on? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, it definitely shows progress. The numbers you called out are better than 23. And, I think this, we should try to reflect this and at least do as well in 24 and 25, maybe a little better than with 24. And that, again, that's a goal. It sounds like you're working continually toward making progress toward reducing those, and that's important for us. So thank you for that. Okay, that's all I have.
Any more questions?
Page 61.
Okay, go ahead.
And this is for, this is really the wastewater, the solid waste. And the question is, did we collect the $850,000? Jeff,
Not yet.
did we collect the $850,000?
I said, not yet. No, sir. It's on it's on its way.
It's on its way.
Yes.
All right, so hopefully we haven't delivered the release, but, okay. So, okay, the next thing that I have is actually on the CIP, so I'm good on the plan, on the.
Okay. Any other questions? This time we will go to item number 3.
Thank you, Mayor. In terms of presentation of the proposed CIP plans, the first on our list is Stan Snodgrass, Director of Engineering, to present the 5-year CIP for streets, bridges, and associated drainage.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dingman. Just to reiterate, this is our annual update to the 5-year capital improvement plan for streets, bridges, and associated drainage. The funding for that program is provided by the 1-cent sales tax. The proposed program contains a variety of projects across the city, including neighborhood overlays, major street projects, drainage improvements, intersection and traffic signal improvements. On page 66, you'll find a summary spreadsheet with anticipated revenues and expenditures for the 5-year period. And starting on page 67, you will find supporting documentation for all the various projects. You will notice that most projects expand over several years. And with that, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Okay. Any questions? Director LeVon Morton. Go ahead.
Okay. So I guess, Stan, you and I had a conversation earlier today about the street overlays. And my understanding is a lot of the street overlay expenditures in 25 are actually projects that are in process right now, and it just will be completed and paid for in 25. Was my understanding of that correct?
That's correct. We have on the street overlays our 24 projects. Actually, at the next board meeting, we'll have our first 24 project we'll be bringing to the board for approval. And then for 25, it includes 4 23 projects and 6 24 projects.
Okay, so these are projects that were approved in the budget, and we just haven't had the engineering or the work
Correct.
started. Okay,
Correct.
Very good. Okay, well, that's a lot of work, and people do appreciate smooth streets. I do a lot. Same thing on neighborhood drainage improvements. Some big numbers. Is that carryover projects as well?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Well, and again, that's another thing where, I know in Ward 3 and some other places I'm familiar with, the drainage projects have made enormous difference in the amount of problems that people who live here have with water flowing up to their, right to their door, or in really unfortunate circumstances into their house. So these are really great projects, and we appreciate the work that you guys put in, because I will tell you, when you finish a project, the problem goes away, and that's something that people remember. So that's really good. Now, I will say that on the Acme Brick project, I guess that I really had hoped that we could get to that detention pond quicker than this forecast shows. And I really would like for us to think about that. Obviously, you guys know better than I do how to spend the money, and the projects are really priority. But to me, the flooding issue, and right now it's extremely dry. We're having, wildfire or fire bans, can't do fire outside burning, and, problems all over. It's causing pipes to collapse and things like that. So it's not something you think of right now, but in the spring of 25, it will be something that, flows right up to people's doorsteps in certain areas of town. And this project was really a brilliant idea from, I think you and Matt Meeker together came up with this, and I think it saves us, what I remember the cost of mitigating some of that flood over the long term was $150 million. And this project's $8 million, so obviously that's an enormous savings for the city, and it's going to do a lot of good. I'm just interested, and I'd appreciate other board members commenting on this too, interested in pushing that forward as quickly as we can get the design and engineering. In the last meeting we had a parks plan that came to us, which I don't object to in general, but I did say vote no on approving the $700,000 design cost because I want this done first. And if we can do the design and get started on the construction of the detention ponds with the parks people knowing what you're going to do, the most efficient, most effective detention pond that can hold the most water and do the most good for flooding, then I'd say bring that design back, and we could go forward with that. But this detention thing, I don't want it to be 28 and 29. I want it to be, as soon as it can be done. And I mean, it'd be great with me if we started moving dirt in 25, late 25. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not an engineer. I don't know what can and cannot be done, but it's just a really important project. And the reason I voted for that purchase of that Acme Brick property was specifically for that detention pond. So that's my comment. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Director Rigo.
Thank you. In that vein, I think it would probably be helpful sometime in the not too distant future, and hopefully potentially, if possible, before the end of the calendar year, to have an item on a study session specifically about the Acme Brick property and project. I think that effort is many things to many different people, and it's probably wise to begin to build some sort of consensus around timing and efforts being made there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that item? Okay, thank you. We'll go to B.
Okay. Item 3B is the 5-year CIP for Parks and Recreation Department. Coming to the podium is Sarah Deuster, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Mr. Mayor, I think actually we still had some comments on 3A.
I'm sorry. Director Good, you recognize?
I apologize.
Go ahead.
Getting a little information over here from the
Okay,
director.
go ahead.
So we were just talking about 3A, right? So this past month, and this really doesn't pertain to you so much, Stan, but more so than the board. I'm just wondering, with all of the leaks that we know that we've got. Matter of fact, we just got the report today. I don't know. I didn't read it, but I saw the report come through. How many leaks have been fixed? But my point is, what kind of damage are these leaks really doing to some of these infrastructures, some of these substructures? Like, I met with the gentleman today that wanted to move his water meter, and this was on a Saturday, and actually Lance was working, and he came out and met with me at the gentleman's property, and we were trying to determine exactly how this fracture in his driveway happened at the leak at the meter. We've had other issues. I've had a guy with a driveway fall in because of a sinkhole due to a water leak, and his car wheel fell in that sinkhole. Got a gentleman on North 6th Street that's got a retaining wall, a couple of retaining walls on North 6th Street that may or may not have been damaged by water leaks because we have mains right there. But my question to the board is there not some policy that we could put in place, at least look at seeing if some of these problems are caused by our water leaks, where the impact isn't so much on the residents that are having to deal with these issues. So if that, sounds like something we might look at, I think that we could, have a study session or even just talk to Carl or administration about it before we put it on the, on a calendar, on a date. But I think it's something worth looking at.
You get that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that goes a long way towards accountability.
Agreed. Thank you.
Makes us accountable to get those leaks fixed.
Director Rigo?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely important wherever we can, however we can, to be creative and engaged on this challenge. Because, I mean, I'll share some figures to illustrate the scope of the problem. I mean, the water leak report today came out, and we're grateful to receive that information. There's 1,224 leaks repaired so far this year. We're 280 some odd days into the year. I mean, that means we're fixing somewhere between 4 and 5 leaks a day on average, and we still have 800 outstanding. So, there's work that's going on virtually every day, but it's just the scope and scale is such that, I think probably everything needs to be on the table for consideration. So thanks for that suggestion, Director Good.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And just to continue, I mean, this isn't anything new. We basically do the same thing with plumbing issues, where water backs up into someone's house. We've done it. We've looked at, I know I've had citizens call about, road issues where it cause auto and tire damage, railroad tracks, the flooding issues that we've addressed where, we just had the issue at Fiona Hills where we paid for some property to be, what did we do there at Fiona? Do you remember what it was about the flooding? The water was coming down.
Right. We bought some houses. We actually bought the entire house.
Okay.
We bought the entire house at appraised value of some houses on Edinburgh. And then,
correct.
yeah, and then there were some other houses on another street in that area that we bought. So.
Yeah. And the like with working with other organizations with the homes that were purchased there off Kincaid because of flooding. So it's nothing new. It's just something to look at, something to help citizens, by way of the city getting involved and having some responsibility. That's all. Thank you.
Director Savage, Christina?
We spend quite a bit on this flooded residents buyout program. And I thought when we, discussed the Acme Brick Park, we were planning to move on it pretty quickly to help, alleviate some of those buyouts we have to do, because I know, that costs quite a bit of money. Why has it been pushed to FY28?
You talking about the Acme Brick property?
Yeah.
This CIP is set up where the portion of the money that was going towards the Parks Master Plan was for 25. This was set up prior to the failure of the item relative to the parks doing the master plan for the entire board. And having discussions with Sarah and Mr. Gefkin and Jeff, we all realized that those two need to mesh together, because you've got 113 acres of property that's been bought out there. You've only got about less than 20 acres of it's going to be detention ponds. So we kind of need to say, let's figure out what works for both, instead of just say, here's a pond, do what you want to with the rest of it. So the plan was for that to go forward, figure out what's going to be done, have the ponds designed accordingly. I mean, the design of the ponds, pretty basic. I mean, we've got like 18 acres total split between the two. We've got a certain volume. How it's shaped, how it's configured and such is really can be moved around depending upon what wants to be used for the park. Now, if it's the board's desire to proceed on, then, I mean, we can hire the engineer. We can put a pond out there and say, here, go make park fit it. So, I mean, it's, kind of two different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, I would say, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but I would say for me personally, that's a project I would like to move on, as soon as possible, because that, that area does flood very easily and it leads to flooding on down. And, I think that should be a priority. I mean, the sooner we get this fixed, the, sooner we're not, paying to buy someone's house because it's been flooded. So that's my 2 cents.
Any other comments on that item? Director Lavon Morton.
Well, if my initial reaction to the parks thing caused a big problem in the whole process, I want a chance to correct that. But I want the city to recognize that my vote, one person, was definitely prioritized on the ponds, on the detention ponds, because of the flooding. Because I remember the Ward 1 meeting we had when we had neighborhood meetings in 2021. People stood up and they said, we live in Ward 1, we have flooding problems. We would like for the city, after all these years, to do something. This is an attempt, and that's what my vote was for, to do something. So, I'm not trying to blame anybody. I don't think anybody's to blame. I just want to make sure that if we move forward with the two projects in conjunction with each other, and I'm fine with this, that we make sure that not 1 gallon of water that we could capture and 1 gallon of flooding that we could avoid is put aside for the benefit of a park, okay? The priority here is the detention of the water first, and the park comes second. Now, it can come a close second. I'm all for parks. I think this will be an extraordinary one. But it's going to cost a lot of money. And this detention says $8.7 million here. Again, I'll repeat that $150 million number, which I think is your number, Stan, or the Corps of Engineers. We're saying 8.7 spent will do at least a large percentage of what 150 million would do. And when you have that kind of return on investment, I want to make it sooner rather than later. So again, I have no objection to the parks. I just want to make sure it's clear what my personal priority is. And I heard Director Christina Katsavas say the same thing, and I heard Director Good say the same thing. Now, obviously, it's only 3 of us, but for what it's worth, that's what I say.
Director Rigo.
Thank you. I just think it speaks to the importance of having this come up very specifically in a planned manner on a study session very soon, because I think we do need to see, based on the conversation last week around the vote and the conversation tonight, I think we really do need to see just what is the actual cost associated with specifically proceeding in a prioritized drainage manner, and then truly what the plan, if you will, from a drainage standpoint, would look like. Because of course there's the pit that's in existence on the west side, but obviously something would have to be constructed or created on the east side. And then what's the plan, if you will, or the overlay for channeling water into those areas. So just something that's more gets more specific as to how the detention stuff will work. It will work. I mean, we know that just because of conversations that we've had, but seeing kind of the specifics that go into that and the time and the process associated with that, I think would be very helpful.
Anything else? If not, Sarah?
Thank you. Attached for your review is our Parks Department's 5-year capital improvement plan for 2025 through 2029. And as a reminder, these projects are funded through a 1/8% sales and use tax that the voters approved to be used exclusively for parks capital projects. New this year, and at the request of the Parks Commission, we did publish a CIP survey asking citizens what their priorities are. And we did that during the month of June, and our staff used those results in addition to conversations we have with citizens out in the park and through email, social media, and also phone calls to develop our proposed CIP. This was presented to the Parks Commission during their September 11, 2024 meeting. The Commission voted unanimously to recommend this to the board for approval. Following that meeting, staff received directive from city administration to include funding to the extent possible, given the projects that are already allocated under contract or were ready to bid for the water slides for Parrot Island Water Park. And that change resulted in the removal of 3 projects, namely John Bell Jr. Park, significant development there, and then also a neighborhood park improvement at Riley Farm Park. And those changes, they have not been presented to the Park Commission at this point. We do have a meeting tomorrow. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll start with Director Rigo and then move tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work, Sarah, and thank you for, I think that's a fairly innovative approach that you took as far as surveying folks in a multi-pronged way around capital improvement priorities. I think that's very different, and appreciate you doing that.
Okay, thank you. Director Good?
Thank you, Mayor. Sarah, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the great job that you do on the monthly parks meetings. Well, that's one of the meetings I do get to attend on occasion on my lunch break, and they are well attended, a lot of good public feedback. And so, like Vice Mayor mentioned, thank you for the survey and the way that you go about doing the survey. So I'm going to say this. So 3 projects having to be cut because now Parks is being asked to help fund the expansion of the Parrot Island water slides that we voted on and was approved by the board. You know, I remember very frankly that in that conversation that I believe Director George Kasavitz, asked, why doesn't the park department pay for this?
They didn't have the money.
That's exactly right. That was the answer that we got, that Parks Department does not have the money.
Yeah.
You know, we've already got a 5-year CIP in place. Of course, you know, things can change. It's just a 5-year outlook on a 5-year plan. But if the money was not there in the general fund for us to make this purchase, then it would not have been made. The vote was, on my part, was, and still is, because I still believe that there is ample funds in the general fund to make this purchase without taking it away from the Parks Department. And I don't know at what point administration decided that there was enough money in parks that could be reallocated from parks to make this purchase, but I think, I'm not the administrator, but I think that was the wrong thing to do.
Director Levon Morton.
I'm finished for now.
Okay, well, I agree with every word that Director Andre Good said. You know, under no circumstances will I vote for this $1,175,000 to come out of the Parks Department. It should come out of the general fund. When I voted for it, I viewed it as a general fund expenditure, not a parks expenditure. The forecast that we were presented today, which is October 15th, says that at the end of the year, the general fund will have a $30 million fund balance. $30 million. The general fund should pay for this, and the projects that were taken off of the parks list should be put back on. And now the only thing I would say about that is that I believe it is prudent to wait on the pickleball courts and see if the county actually spends the money they say they're going to spend at Ben Guerin on pickleball courts. And if they do, then we can reevaluate, do we really need more pickleball courts? Because I understand they're going to do a fairly big project. It remains to be seen if they actually do that, but I think we should wait on that. Just kind of put it on hold, maybe move it out a couple of years, and make sure we know what they're going to do before we commit that money. Because Ben Guerin is very much, really, in a lot of ways, centrally located between East Fort Smith and actually the Vienna Hills area and areas like that. So it's a good place to put pickleball courts. So that's my comment. But I would not support taking this out of parks. I think it needs to be reversed. And I will argue hard for that when we come to the budget.
Director Christina Casavage.
I was always against those water slides, and, this is why, because who enjoys the pickleball courts? It's generally older people. And, I always say we never focus on our senior citizens, and loneliness is an epidemic, and we need to be, getting people out of the house and active, and, I don't like this. We've only approved 2.1 million for the water slides. We never appropriated the other money. I mean, Jeff, is it not too late to just get rid of the slides? I mean, have we signed a contract?
I believe a contract has been signed, yes.
Has money been sent? Any funds sent?
I think the contract is for the purchase of the slides.
Vote, so.
Did you have any other comments?
Well,
I don't think the vote would change.
Okay.
you can go on.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Director Rego was next in the queue.
Yeah.
And then
Thank you.
Director George.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly don't disagree with I do not disagree with the sentiment about removing the funding from the Parks Department to go towards the allocations for the water slides. I will say, however, as far as the $175,000, that was one of the things highlighted as it relates to parking expansions at John Bell Jr. Park. I would say that I would be open to the notion that there is perhaps a better and higher use for that $175,000 within the parks budget. I'm an avid frequenter of John Bell Jr. Park with my children, and I feel like for the near future, if not the medium-term future, that the parking situation is quite adequate at the park. But that's a minor statement, and the broader point is that even if that were to be reprogrammed, I would like to see it be reprogrammed within the parks budget. And I know there'll be more opportunities in the future for programmatic funding talks. But thanks again for the work you do.
Director George Casavage.
Thank you, Mayor. Sarah, let me ask you this. This is my favorite subject, the water slides. 4.2 million, right?
Yes, sir.
Is what we're paying. Installation, another $1,175,000, that's 5.2 million?
No, the 4.2 million includes the entire cost of the slides plus the installation.
Installation?
Yeah.
Okay, what about the infrastructure?
It includes the infrastructure
The
as well.
transport, what about water, sewer, concrete work, expanding the parking
It's
lot?
supposed to include all that.
Well, I know, but I don't think that's going to happen. Let me ask you something. When we took the money from the general fund, the Parks Department didn't have the funds, right?
That's correct.
You were broke.
Wasn't broke. Those dollars were all allocated for the uses that they were approved by the CIP.
Okay, so what changed now that you have $1,175,000?
We had to eliminate projects. For example, John Bell Jr. Park has been ready to bid since late 2023. But projects were prioritized over those this year, and then that was something that we could pull back on.
Okay, Jeff, does the board not have to approve the contract for the slides?
The board
We didn't
approved,
approve a contract, we just approved the purchase,
the board
correct?
approved the purchase of the slides, and that's all that's been contracted at this point.
Well, how many parks do we have in Fort Smith now? 35?
Yes, sir.
And your annual budget is?
If you include the CIP, it's multi-million
The
dollars.
1A tax and the general fund money?
Both of them together?
Mm-hmm.
Our 1/8 cent sales tax generates about $3.8 million, and then we have an additional $3 or so million for all other operations.
So around $6.5 million budget.
Depending on how the sales tax comes in for our CIP, yes.
Well, again, Sarah, I just thought that money, that money could have gone to other uses. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Director Christina Savage.
Well, I'm guessing this wasn't her idea to give the money up.
No, I know
out
that.
of her department.
No, I know that.
You know, she builds a plan based on what we all say we want. And, you know, we need to be mindful of that our city employees, you know, they work for weeks or months at a time on things, and then we sit up here
Well,
and in 5 minutes
I'm not criticizing Sarah.
I'm not criticizing her either.
But she
I
has
think
a boss
she
she
does a
has to answer to,
fantastic
too.
job.
All right.
Yeah, I have the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know, I mean, it frustrates me because we do it time and time again. I mean, I don't think I could do my job like that if, you know, I mean, I know it's hard to work for board, but, you know, they put so much effort into things, and there's so many times that we just, you know, it takes 5 minutes of discussion and their weeks of work is out the window. I mean, everything that I'm seeing on here is eliminated is everything we've talked about, saying we wanted. And we had long discussions about John Bell Jr. Park, and then, you know, Sarah puts it together. And so whose idea was it to take this money out of the parks? Was that administration?
Carl.
Okay.
Well, you know, we worked, you know, a long time. We talked a long time about these projects. She made a CIP plan. I thought it was a good plan, and I really think we should stick with it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Sarah. Item C.
Item 3C is the 5-year CIP for the fire department and its portion of the 1/8 cent sales and use tax. Coming to the podium is Boyd Waters, the fire chief.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present this plan to you. This plan will serve as an outline for fire apparatus replacement, the staff vehicle replacements, fire station repairs, upgrades, and major equipment purchases. The fire suppression apparatus purchases are included in this memo because they're part of the quarter-cent sales tax for fire and parks. This plan will be adjusted in the future as department needs and priorities change. Also included in this last sheet are the historical figures and the projections for the sales and use tax for that fire department. And as you all know, we have had to change up some of the stuff just due to the timing of the apparatus, the cost of the apparatus. And so we've looked into doing refurbishments, and the board approved to be able to have 2 apparatus refurbished next year. So once we see how those work, we'll see how we can push other things out to make the money in that 4803 account last. Because if you'll look at the next to last page of the 4803 account, in 2029, if things keep on going the way they are, that account will be broke just because of the rising cost of the apparatus. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our fire chief? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Item D.
Item D is the 10-year CIP for the Streets and Traffic Control Department. Coming to the podium is Matt Meeker, Director, Streets and Traffic Control.
Good evening. Presented for your review this evening is the 2025 through 2034 Capital Improvements Program for Streets and Traffic Control. For 2025, the department proposes $910,000 in vehicle and equipment replacements and $55,000 in additional purchases. Replacements will be paid for out of the department's capital equipment replacement fund, and additional purchases will be budgeted as capital outlays from the department's operating fund. The additional purchases include $25,000 for a batwing finish mower and $30,000 for a trailer large enough to haul a tractor and mower. This additional equipment will allow the department to maintain the interchanges that are currently being maintained by Keep Fort Smith Beautiful. This will save the department approximately $75,000 annually, as we currently fund Keep Fort Smith Beautiful to take care of these locations for us. Also presented for your review this evening is the 2025 Sidewalk Program. For 2025, the department is proposing 3.10 miles of new sidewalk construction and 0.66 miles of sidewalk repairs. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Okay, thank you much. Director Rigo.
Matt, as a, you know, I know you're a professional who stays on the cutting edge of your profession, and so I'm sure you know about the updates, the recent federal guideline updates to sort of the definition of streets and sidewalks, and you know the what is it, the manual on the uniform traffic control devices. And so, is there any thought that's been given so far internally in its early stages as to, a sort of broadening the definition or the funding that's available from a sidewalk perspective to include things like trails or paths as opposed to just the more traditional sidewalks? Because I think that definition has changed a little bit since the new guidelines came out.
Well, I mean, we've looked kind of into this stuff legally recently, and to the best of my knowledge, it's not legal to use any of our funding for trails or paths separate and apart from, say sidewalks or multi-use trails that are parallel to the road and part of the roadway system.
Cool. Okay. Well, just something to, obviously keep on our radar screen. And thank you for the work that you do with the Sidewalk program. I know that it's something that, I always hear very positive feedback about. And it's one of those things that we do what we can with the resource that we can. Just for people's, knowledge and information, would you mind speaking briefly onto sort of speaking briefly to the methodology that goes into which program, which sidewalks sort of get selected each year, or what neighborhoods, or what goes into making that program a reality every year? Sure.
Let me move over here to my sidewalk program, just my notes. But this year we did take a couple of our projects are actually from the phase 1 sidewalk projects that were identified in the Move Fort Smith plan. But we also take input from citizens, board of directors, administration, and city staff when we develop our sidewalk program. So new sidewalk construction projects, they are, each one of them is rated based on several characteristics. We prioritize them based on proximity to schools, pedestrian usage, average daily traffic, connectivity to existing sidewalks, and then overall constructability. Are we going to be able to build it with our city forces? And so we consider all those factors when determining which sidewalk projects to construct.
Thank you. And again, thank you for the work and effort that you and your team put into adding sidewalks in our community. Thank you.
Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, I'm just going to make a plug real quick. So, what we do as board members, happens Monday through Sunday. And we get phone calls and people we have to go see on the weekends. And it never fails that I will send an email pertaining to streets and sidewalks and other things and other departments. But to Matt's praise, even on the weekends, this guy, I have to tell him, quit answering my emails. Put your iPad down. He's constantly answering me on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. So thank you for the work you do, not just for me, but for this whole community. But, and I'm going to, and I know you don't do it for the praise, but, and did you mention something about a Batmobile purchase?
No.
That was a joke.
Batwing finish mower.
That was a joke. So even though we're not going to purchase a Batmobile, with the purchase of the new equipment and your new vehicles, what happens to all of the equipment that we're no longer going to use?
Well, some equipment's just flat out worn out, and we'll auction that off. But a lot of my equipment that I replace, it kind of goes into our reserve fleet. So we keep it off here to the sides. Like if we have something break down, we'll pull it out and limp it along and use what we've got to try to keep work going. I've been accused many times of using duct tape and baling wire keeping stuff going, but
you probably did.
And so. A lot of our stuff we will keep. Now, like we're replacing a tractor this year, that tractor we're replacing is done. And so, it'll get sold off to auction. Somebody will get it for parts probably.
Got it. Good looking budget, looks sound. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Director LaVon Morton.
So I only have one question, and that is, on a percentage basis, what of the sidewalk total number of linear feet is new sidewalks versus repaired sidewalks?
I hadn't looked at the percentage. It's a heavy percentage because the 3.1 miles of it is, of the 3.76 total, is going to be new construction.
Okay, very good. 3.1 miles of new sidewalks in the city, which people really appreciate. I'll just say that I get a lot of comments from people in neighborhoods and that I run into about how much they appreciate the sidewalk. So thank you.
Okay. Director Christina Casavage.
Matt, how are you with staffing? I know you were having trouble finding people to do concrete work. Is that sorted itself out a little bit?
We're doing okay right now. I mean, the hiring freeze is on, so we are, losing people occasionally due to attrition. And so, but I mean, we're keeping up with everything right now. So like, for instance, Sidewalk, I think we had 3.69 miles that were approved initially for this year of sidewalk work. And I'm confident we're going to get more than that this year done. So.
Okay, good. Good, thanks.
Any other questions for Matt? Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you for my street map.
This time we'll go to E.
Item 3E is the Transit Asset Management Plan. Coming to the podium is Ken Savage, Director of Public Transit.
Good evening. Tonight's study session, item 3E, involves a review of the department's Transit Asset Management Plan for 2024. This plan is a requirement of our grant partners, Federal Transit Administration. It outlines how we will assess, monitor, and report the physical conditions of transit assets used in operations of public transportation. The executive summary outlines approximately $8.9 million in overall investments that will need to be made to keep the system in a state of good repair for the next 5 years. With these investments, we anticipate approximately $7.3 million. Can you hear this? Okay. Approximately $7.3 million in reimbursements with a $1.6 million local impact after the grant reimbursements. In your packet is a summary of the department's active grants, and those total approximately $8.7 million in funds available to date through a reimbursement process. The transit department receives approximately $2.4 million each year as part of its annual apportionment, and that's to address operations and capital needs. The major components of this plan include rolling stock, support equipment, and facilities. It's a very detailed plan, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have within the plan.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Director Rigo?
Thank you, Mayor. Ken, thank you for the work you and your department do. Is it accurate to say, I want to just make sure I'm remembering some discussions from months and years past, but isn't it accurate that well upwards of over 90% of your costs, if you will, and that includes equipment operations, et cetera, comes via the federal government in grants or assistance and things like that?
I wouldn't say 90%. Our operating grants are 50-50, so that does supply a great amount of reimbursement. But for our capital, and there are many things that are included as capital, such as our maintenance, our entire maintenance and salaries, they're reimbursed 80%.
80.
ADA expenses that we provide or services that we provide are reimbursed 80%. When you look at these large buses, they're reimbursed 85%. The smaller vans are reimbursed 80%. So there's a variety of reimbursement percentages depending on the project that we're pursuing. But yes, overall, a large percentage of our department is reimbursed through federal grants. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your work.
Director Levon Morton.
So with respect in general to your equipment, the status of your equipment overall right now compared to, say, where it's been in the past, how would you rate your overall status in terms of whether you're better off or the same as in past years, say 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago?
I'd say it's very good, particularly when you look at our fixed route fleet, which we replaced the entire fleet of new equipment. And those buses are all 12-year buses. So if you look at page 212 in your packet, page 40 in the plan, it shows you an outline of each bus and how they're assessed in its condition. But the top half of the page is all our fixed route buses, and those are all 12-year buses. So they run far off the page in the distant future with, when they'll need to be replaced. So what we're working on next is our demand response fleet and getting that up to par. I mean, it's good now, but we do need to cycle those out. So that's where our next focus is. And we've been working hard on our support equipment. And so that's in much better shape than what it has been. We used vehicles from other departments when we first started with the TAM plan, but that didn't really meet the criteria of FTA. They worked okay, but they weren't new enough or safe enough. With the new vehicles, you have a lot more safety features and things, and so we've brought the support equipment back up to date, and we're very pleased with that.
So now, of the new vehicles that you purchased, the top half of the page that you described, what percentage came from the federal government reimbursements versus how much we had to spend, not in dollars, just percentages?
So what's unique about the large buses is that was provided with CARES Act funds that we had, and that was 100% reimbursed.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a shameless plug for myself. So on occasion, when I do get an opportunity to attend the transit meetings, I do. And Ken does a great job. I know Vice Mayor thanked you and your staff, but also thank the Transit Advisory Commission. I've watched these group of citizen volunteers who don't get paid for their work and their time. Occasionally they do get a good lunch, but they give good input to Ken and his staff. And Ken, I've got to thank you, like the majority, actually I've got to say all of the department heads that I've spoken to, and that is every single one of you guys. You guys do a great job of keeping track of current federal policies and new grant funds and policies that we need to be made aware of. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you for kind words, Director.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Any other comments for transit? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This time I'll ask if there are any comments on the preliminary agenda for the 22nd. If there are none, this time we'll go to the Citizens Forum. Madam Clerk.
Yes, we do have several, the first being Kimberly Fodge, and each will have 5 minutes.
My name is Kimberly Fodge, and I represent Village Harbor Property Owners Association. I am a member of the Board of Directors for Village Harbor, and I serve as the Secretary-Treasurer. I come today to discuss how the recent increase in the water rates and charges have affected us and will impact us. Village Harbor is a nonprofit residential neighborhood on the east side of Fort Smith and was established over 50 years ago. We offer several amenities to our property owner members, which include a pavilion and 3 swimming pools. Our pools are closed for several months during the year, and activity at our pavilion is limited during the fall and winter months, so our water usage is minimal in comparison to other POAs in Fort Smith. Our pools fall under state health regulations because they are considered semi-private. We must keep the water at certain level and circulate the water in our pools to maintain the required chemical balances. Village Harbor has 2 accounts with the city for water services, an irrigation account for our swimming pools, and a commercial account for our pavilion. The commercial account also includes sewer and sanitation. For months, the city discussed increasing water rates based upon the recommendations of Burns McDonnell, who presented information at the April 9th study session. During this presentation and the discussions in later meetings and study sessions, the focus was on residential customers and not irrigation or commercial. Being that no discussion took place about commercial or irrigation accounts, in fact, Burns McDonnell quickly skipped over that slide in his presentation, I believe it was assumed that these accounts would be impacted similarly to the residential accounts, a minimal impact. However, upon receiving our latest bill from the city and preparing our budget for 2025, I can assure you that impact is not minimal. Our irrigation account has been and will be significantly affected by these rate increases. The monthly base charge increased 21%. The monthly base rate increased 102%. Our commercial account has been and will be affected as well. Our monthly base charge increased 21%, and our monthly base rate increased 46%. The increases in these rates also increase the amount of taxes we will be charged. Combined, we are looking at a 78% increase in water expenses alone for the next 12 months under the current rates that took effect August 1st. And that's if our current water usage does not increase. At the April study session, additional increases in rates and charges were proposed to take effect January 1, but that increase was not included in the motion that was passed at the July 11th meeting. The board is scheduled to vote on that sometime before January 1st. If you do vote on it and it passes, our water expenses will increase an additional 47% under the same usage amounts. When comparing our expenses prior to the August rate increase and to the increase that will take effect or potentially take effect on January 1st, in total, we will incur a 161% increase in our water utility expense for 2025. This does not include sewer or sanitation increases that are expected due to the consent decree. For these rates, for many, are a budget killer. They are not sustainable, nor are they business friendly. In fact, it's completely unacceptable, and the city needs to find alternative solutions to fund our debt, such as cutting expenses and decreasing spending like other businesses are being forced to. My question for you is, why are nonprofit residential communities charged the same rates as larger for-profit corporations? And can a rate structure be created for nonprofits? Something must change. The drops in the bucket must stop. The bucket is overflowing and we are drowning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments.
I'm sorry?
I said thank you so much for your comments.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Dan Williams.
Good evening. It is an honor to be able to speak with y'all again this evening. And, I hoped that over the last few months things would feel better. They still don't feel better, especially after hearing that. I think y'all have opened a can and you don't know what to do with it. I made mention last meeting, I encourage you to go read Nehemiah chapter 8. I don't know if any of you did, but I'll encourage you to go read Deuteronomy chapter 3 tonight. Because there's a provision that happens in that to where God wants to come hang out with the people that he loves. And he loves you guys, but he also loves when you listen to his voice and are directed by his Holy Spirit. The problem I'm having is I don't see who's in charge here. It seems like Carl that's in charge, because I just heard Levon say something a while ago that really caught my attention. And I hate it because he backpedaled a little bit. Last meeting, he took a stand, and I thought maybe we do have a little bit of leadership up here. And it made me kind of admire him for a moment. But then he backpedaled, and it troubled me, because the problem that this city is in is going to take strong leadership. But it's going to take strong leadership that seeks Almighty God and His power and His provision. This lady up here just shared her heart in this and the impact that it has on her life. I didn't hear one person come up here that says they were going to have any kind of budget cut. We've all had to make budget cuts. You've had to make budget cuts, but you think you have free money to just go spend on water slides and stuff like that. All I can say is, how dare you? How dare you take that money that citizens have worked hard for and go do what you want to do? There is something unclean that is going on in our city leadership, and God is exposing it, because I wouldn't be here otherwise. I've got other things that I can do for the Lord Almighty. But He has brought me here to tell you this. There is something unclean, and He can't come hang out, because in Deuteronomy 23, this is what He tells the men that are fighting to secure people and to be a leader. He says, have a shovel with you. And when you need to go to the restroom in the middle of the battle, go dig a hole and bury it, because I don't want to walk around your feces. And that's what the Lord has for me to tell you right now. You guys have feces on you. On you. Because you're putting perspectives and you're letting people bend your ear and soften you to do things that people want to do, that people right here are saying, hey, there's got to be a better way, but you won't listen. You will not listen. You're still going to do your priority. And I believe that y'all are people that could be led by God, but guess what? I don't see it. I don't see it. And that's the problem for me. And so I want to say this. You need to find the leaks. Today, when I started going to the meeting, there was about 800 leaks. Guess what I heard tonight? There's still 800. So every month that you find 200, there's still 200 more popping up, or they're not all being reported. You need to find the leaks. That will keep you from having to spend the millions of dollars on the water transmission line, and it will solve an issue so you don't have to spend $70 million on a new water treatment thing. Find the leaks, whatever it takes. If you have to personally go out there and find them, do it. You're in the position to do it. The other thing I want to say, fix the sewer problem. Fix the sewer problem. Part of that sewer problem is the flooding that he talked about, and that's one of the reasons we don't need more parks right now. I love parks. I have kids. I have people that enjoy them, but we don't need to spend money on it. We need to start cutting back. You need to start cutting back and understanding that we've all had to cut back. And whether you cut back or not, there's cutback coming. You need to be aware and attentive. The cutback is coming, and it's going to happen. Whether you like it or not, you might as well start liking it, enjoying it, and get on page. And this could be a beautiful thing, because I'm going to tell you right now, 400 years Nehemiah went to a place they couldn't rebuild the wall in 400 years. He did it in 52 days. You want to know how he did it? He hit his face, and he prayed, and he fasted. He fasted and sought Almighty God, and God gave him wisdom and provision to meet every need, and it happened really quick. When's the last time you fasted? I'm not done. I have 27 seconds. When's the last time you fasted? When's the last time you sought the heart of God and allowed God to speak to your heart and mind, and know that He was with you, and He was your strong tower, and He was your protector, and He gave you wisdom from on high to where you could make a difference? People want to see leadership that can make a difference. Take a stand. You need to get rid of our city administrator.
Next, we have Andy Postrick.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Andy Postrick, Fort Smith. I just wanted to echo the compliments given for Mr. Meeker. I'm one of those weekend people who reached out, and he got back to me right away. He also replies to my emails, so I wanted to thank Mr. Meeker for that as well. I also wanted to speak about the CIP program for streets. First of all, thank you for cutting the $19 million budget that we had in place for the Planters Road expansion. That was a big budget cut of $19 million, so thank you. My eyes were next drawn to the next largest thing this year, which is the widening of Mazard Road. I think that I would like to at least start a discussion on maybe can we push that back so that we can move the pond forward on the schedule a little bit. Because the way I see it, Mazard For $14.5 million, there's about 7,800 average annual daily traffic on that road. I don't know that that's enough to justify widening that roadway at this time. It's also part 2 of a widening project. When we did part 1, you had a whole swarm of neighbors come in here and complain about the excess noise after the first half was completed. So I'm not sure that the second half will be immune from that same issue. And then also, I think one of the rationales behind this widening project is that the board or somebody would like to see more growth on the southeast side of town where I live, but I don't think it's necessarily the government's role to try to prop up land values where y'all would like to see growth. Maybe we should let the market sort of dictate that before we dump money into a new roadway project. So maybe if we could just start that discussion about that roadway widening project, move it back, axe it, whatever it is. That would be my pick for the changes to the CIP for this year. Thank you.
Next, we have Leanne Vick.
Hello, my name is Leanne Vick, and I'm here representing Cisterna POA and some other groups. We have been in contact with other POA and HOA groups regarding our latest water bill. Cisterna has 79 homes, Wellington has 50, Village Harbor, who you heard from, I think she has 327, Riley Farms has over 400, and then Jeffrey Way has 40. We do understand the need for the city to raise water rates since it has been since 2011 since we had a water rate increase. We also understand the need for the board to make those tough decisions. Not making a tough decision can certainly be as hard and painful as making them. We as a city are all paying the price for a tough decision not being made many years ago on sewer updates and repairs that all of you are getting blamed for. If my grandchildren stay in Fort Smith when they grow up, I don't want them to be paying the price for water repair and outdated water infrastructure like we are doing for the sewer. Again, because tough decisions weren't made, but at the same time, it has to be sustainable for Fort Smith residents. I feel like I take the time to follow the latest information, but I do not recall ever seeing that our water rates would more than double. All our POA and HOA are in the same boat. An example, in September, Cisterna's water was $3,400. We had 3 meters. In October, it was $6,500. It went from $3.35 a CCF to $6.76 a CCF, which is more than double. If we can't get a different rate, Cisterna will be looking at a $35,000 water bill annually. That will be almost it was $18,000 almost last year, so it will double. And if there is the January increase that was talked about, that will add an additional $10,000 on top of that. These increases will take away from planned repairs, maintenance, and other improvements. Some of the POAs that I have talked to have had to cut back their water 50% until they can increase their dues or get a different rate from the city. Now, to why we're here. We're asking for you to consider something. And I'll be honest, I don't know what something is, but please consider something. Not sure what car wash rates are. I don't know what the ballparks pay for their water. I think the city has to pay that, so I don't know if you pay the same rate. Or maybe consider a staggered tier. We have 3 meters at the high rate. One in October was 263 CCF, one was 276. We water twice a week. And one was 310 CCF. Could there be a tier 1 that we get the 350 rate, and then so many CCF, we get another rate, and then on up to tier 4? I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm looking to you to help some kind of break. I do understand you have to increase the water rates. I do understand that. Many at these PO and HOAs are elderly, like myself, and some of them are veterans. Again, we understand the need for an increase, but is there an option that can work for all of us? Thank you for listening and for your consideration.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Next, we have Carrie Saley.
Tonight, I just have a couple of questions. I'm new to being involved in city government, and I hear of all these different surveys that the citizens complete, and then based on those surveys, major decisions are made about expenses and infrastructure, that type of thing. So how do a large amount of citizens get notice of these surveys? Because I didn't know about them. And then will they not know to go, I don't think they'll know to go to the Fort Smith website, city website, to find surveys, or know when to do that, to sign up, those types of things. So can these city surveys be announced like on the local news? I watch the local news every night. Can we start letting all the citizens of Fort Smith know that these surveys are happening, and give us about a month of repetition of be sure and fill out, the survey, that type of thing? Because one major plan in the city was based on only like maybe close to 700 citizens, but yet the percentage of approval was 96, something like that. So that's my first question. And then also, I've been concerned about the large blue buses going around town, mostly empty. I asked a bus driver one day, I pulled up right beside him and lowered my window, and he lowered his, and I said, how many do you have riding your bus each day? And he said about 25 people. So my concern is the cost of maintaining these buses, and then why are we paying such a large expense for a large bus for such a small amount of people, when we have transit vans that would be a lot less expensive and carry the amount of people that are needing transit. So those are my questions. Is there a way to get an answer to those questions?
You want to respond to it?
Let's say, regarding your question on communications of the availability of surveys, we have stepped up our communications efforts in terms of trying to publicize those on social media channels and our own public notification system, as well as our website. It does take engagement on the public side to become a part of that. You go to our website and you sign up to be notified of various items in the city's communication range, and we put those notices out, and you get a notification through your email or text message that we have something available that you might be interested in seeing. There's a whole menu of things, and I forget the number of it now, but there's 100 different things you can sign up for to be notified on. Surveys is part of that. You can sign up to be notified on all of those things. And we are ever trying to expand the content that we put out on those. Many of our departments put out notices every day, make a point of doing it at least a couple of times a week. And things like survey participation is distributed that way. And we have over the last, and this has only been in place for the last year or so, maybe 18 months. And in that time, we've gotten close to 16,000 subscribers. So people are using it. We try frequently at public meetings and events to encourage people to go to our website and sign up for that, because that is the best and most efficient way we have to notify folks. The Parks Department has its social media pages, which it puts notices out, but it also goes to Gov Delivery to put those out to people who have specifically subscribed to be notified by the city on items like that. Regarding the question on the buses, I mean, we had I would say when we were chiefly using the smaller buses, they were consistently at capacity, consistently full, transporting people to and from work, to and from the store, to doctor's appointments, things like that. We had a capacity issue with the smaller buses and made the decision, in large part because of the availability of funds, to go to larger buses. And, when you expand your program like that, it does have capacity probably that's going unused at the moment, but when people realize that it's there and available to them, more and more people are using it.
Okay. So can the news be used, the local news? Because I see your answer being for people who are in their 20s to maybe 50s. Most people don't, a lot of people don't do social media and that type of thing. So what is wrong with using our local news time, 6 o'clock news, 10 o'clock news, to say, hey, there's a survey, go to so-and-so, this website or this link, or go make a phone call or whatever, but just letting other people know 16,000 out of 80,000 is not very many. So I want a full opportunity for the whole entire city to cooperate or to be a part of that. So I'm just asking, can the news be used? Maybe once a month or once, because the news is used a lot for the board of directors and decisions that are made. It's used an awful lot to make points. So.
And your point's taken, but I will say that our news media outlets are active participants in our notification systems, and they do communicate with us, and they do ask questions. But we don't control the content of what they put on their broadcast or put in their articles and such. I mean, we try to provide as much information as possible.
Could you just make sure, I'll leave you alone about it, but I was just hoping that you would make sure that if there's a survey that's going to make a major decision for the whole entire city, could that at least be on the news? Could you call them and say, hey, this is important, it's a survey for the whole city, and that way we all know, hey, we better go to that and fill that out.
We certainly make it available to our news media partners, yes ma'am.
Thank you. Director Good, you had a comment?
I did want to make a comment to Ms. Is it Sally's question pertaining to the transit. So as Deputy City Administrator spoke to, with the smaller buses, there were occupancy problems. Not only were there occupancy problems, the other problem was, things changed. Like the newer buses, the larger buses are lower to the ground. They're easier for people that have either handicaps or accessibilities to get in. And anytime you see a bus that's probably empty or half empty or not full, realize also that we have several routes with different time segments. We have fixed routes and we have on-demand routes. So just because you see a bus that's not being used doesn't mean that the citizens of the area aren't taking advantage of these services, and that's just what it is. It's providing a service. So these larger buses didn't come with an extra price to the citizens of Fort Smith because, like Ken spoke to, these were part of a federal program that we receive reimbursement monies to receive. So this is also providing a service for the citizens of Fort Smith. And I can't name the number, and I probably shouldn't name any of the organizations that have attended the TAC meetings, Transit Advisory Commission meetings, asking for tickets for fares or discounted fares for their members. And these are groups, not just churches, but organizations. So the transit is very much used and appreciated. And also it helps for the look of the city of Fort Smith because it shows the rest of the country, people that might be interested in moving here or staying here, that we are a progressive community. Thank you.
Director Rigo.
Thank you, Mayor. And to build on what Director Good was saying, Ken also mentioned that the maintenance costs were something that was reimbursed as well. So, but thank you for your questions.
And I was surprised when I rode one. They are not your typical over-the-highway bus. They have spaces for handicapped, accessible individuals. Ken, what is the capacity of one of those buses?
So the large buses will hold roughly 45 passengers.
Right.
They'll hold up to 3 wheelchair stations at one time. And they are used in multiple settings, all 3 wheelchair stations.
Yes. Yeah, if you haven't seen one, I'd encourage you to take a look at one. They're very nice. Director LaVon Morton.
Well, I'll just comment. Most of the people that ride the buses either don't own a car or they can't drive a car. So without the buses, they would have no way to get from point A to point B other than taxis, which are not practical in a lot of situations. And that is especially true with medical type things. So it's really important for that. I've known some people in the past who use buses to get to their medical appointments, some of the specialty buses. So there is a great use among the people that are the most needy. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Director Good.
I just wanted to piggyback off Director LeBon's, Director Morton's comments. Also attending these parks, the transit meetings, there are people that rely on these buses too to get back and forth to work. And I didn't even think about that until I heard, that brought up by a person who had just gotten a job and didn't have transportation and needed to get back up to Chaffee Crossing somewhere, but they are highly used. And I believe the last report that we got from Ken that ridership is actually up, correct?
That's correct. We're back up to the levels of what we were in 2019 pre-COVID. So,
That's great.
Which is ahead of the nation's average.
Appreciate that, Ken. Thank you. Solly, thank you so much for your questions.
Thank you for answering those questions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Chris Cadelli.
Yeah, I just wanted to, ask that as y'all begin to look at this 2025 budget, I hope you take a real hard look at, trying to find some cuts, trying to find some areas that you can take money from one pot and move it over for this, this tremendous issue with the consent decree, the water, the sewer, the leaks everywhere. The rate increases, we just had a big one, and obviously this has already sparked, a lot of outrage. And as far as I can tell, that's just getting started. So I would love to see, I'd love to see the board say, hey, we're going to, here's some cuts we're making actually in spending. We're not just going to stick it to you guys and expect y'all to cover all this, cover the cost of all these needs. We're going to find some areas that maybe we can either, hold off on or delay or maybe cut out completely. I love parks. I think parks are great. I think every, great community should have a great number of parks, but it seems like, I've been coming to these meetings just for a few months now, and I hear more about parks and park expenditures than this huge issue we have. We got a guy that goes around the city and actually films these water leaks. And it's like he could do this all day, every day and not get to them all. And I know y'all talk about the 800 about. I would imagine that number is much higher than that, the ones that, we don't know about. So, I would hope that would be something you guys could bring to us in some of these meetings, is saying, hey, we know we're in some tough times and we're going to have to make some tough decisions that are going to, maybe help relieve some of this. The water slide, that fiasco, when I hear you talk about the 4 million and then, the other stuff involved with that, I just can't help but think about how many water leaks that might have repaired, and that money, the water and sewer department, it just seems like it doesn't get the attention it needs, considering it has the biggest task, the biggest mandate, the biggest issue the city faces. And, it just seems like that they're not getting the support and funding that they need to tackle this problem. So I would just love to see, I would love to see the board focus on the most important stuff first. Some of this ancillary stuff and bells and whistles and parks and all. We have great parks. Do we need another one? We're talking about the park that's literally would be a stone's throw from Creekmore. We can't even keep barely keep Creekmore up to date. I mean, I know there's work going on out there now, but, you know, for years, it looked run down and, you know, pretty well dilapidated. And so we're talking about wanting to take this Acme brick area and put in another park there. I just don't understand where that money's going to come from and what other departments are going to suffer, you know, from the funds that would eat up. Yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Crystal Cadelli.
Director Good.
All right, I'm sorry, Ms. Cadelli, I'd like to make a couple of comments to Mr. Cadelli's comments and questions. First, I was taking notes because I try to take notes of who speaks and what issues that our citizens have. And from the very beginning, you talked about cuts. You'd like to see the board make cuts. The budget before us has cuts in it. As you heard Sarah speak to the Parks Department, she was asked to cut her budget. You know, not to mention, and this is to the board, you know, we have had items for the new needs from last budget session that we have not even filled. We haven't talked about it in a couple of months. So you talk about cuts, we have not made some of the necessary changes that we approved a few months ago this year, and here we are on the next budget session. And this budget session, we're already talking about making more and more cuts. I'm gonna remind the board as we go through you know, our meetings, when we are promising department heads and citizens what all we can and we cannot do, all that is contingent upon the money we have. Mr. Cadelli, you mentioned that the water utilities department does not have the support. They don't have the funds. Well, part of those funds and support should come from the use of the product that they supply to the citizens and to the community, businesses and residents. If the water usage can't pay for itself, that means we're taking money from another department to pay, or another fund to pay for, give an example, whether it's sewer or something else, to pay for those projects that need to be done. So right now, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that Lance's department is funded properly from the right channels. And you spoke about infrastructure. You know, the leaks, you talked about leaks. The leaks are infrastructure problems. You know, it's no new news that we have not maintained doing the infrastructure needed. I mean, the city is an old city with lots of infrastructure needs. It's not new to any city in the United States, especially any old city. So it's nothing new. So anything worth having is worth investing in. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Crystal Cadelli.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt. Good evening. I'm going to start by saying, as the saying goes, money doesn't grow on trees. We need to focus our priorities and put our wants on hold. Those wants being new parks, sidewalks and trails, community centers, and things of luxury that the city does not need at this point. We need to maintain what we have, and we need to put all additional funds into this heavy burden that we have called the consent decree. That should be what we are talking about 90% of the time at these meetings, because that is what is causing the burden. You're spending the citizens' money without limitations. Do you think that our citizens would rather have a park or a lower water bill? Because I can promise you it's going to be the lower water bill. There are young adult families, there are elderly people that cannot afford to live with the water increase that has already occurred, and now there's going to be additional increases year over year because of the sewage. And I'm going to be honest with you, in examining the 2024 budget, you know, I've observed some very concerning dollars that are being extracted from the the water and sewage department. And those concerns are $227,000 to the mayor's budget, which is that's 34% of the mayor's budget coming out of water and sewer. $166,000 is coming out for the board of directors budget at 37% of their budget. $553,000 is coming out to the city administrator's office at 34%. That's almost $1 million that's coming out of water and sewer. The one department that needs the funds the most. We have leaks, we have water line issues, we have consent decree issues, and we're pulling money out of their budget when it should be coming out of the general fund. And I really struggle with the decisions that the board is making with the citizens of Fort Smith. I mean, you say that we have a $30 million general fund that you know, is not going anywhere, that is an overage. Why are we not putting that to the consent decree?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, why do we continue to pay fines? Frankly, I think that you've really got the attention of the citizens of Fort Smith, and I don't think that this is going to end, and I think it's going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. You want people to move into this city, but how are they going to afford to live here? How are businesses going to grow? You have HOAs and POAs that are already coming and speaking about not being able to afford their water, and then they're going to have to increase their dues. How are people supposed to live? Because we want parks, and we want water slides, and we want trails, and we want sidewalks. Well, yeah, I love those things. I want all those things. But guess what? We can't afford it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mark McDaniel.
Good evening. I'm here representing the Cisterna Board of Realtors. Cisterna Board of Realtors. I apologize. I am a realtor. Cisterna Board that represents the 79 homes and the occupants thereof in Cisterna.
I'm sorry, sir. Can you please repeat your name again, please, for me?
Yes, sir. Mark McDaniel. You bet. First of all, I want to thank you guys for what you do. You do have to make tough decisions every day, keeping up with all the different avenues of funds that we expend throughout the fiscal year. And I thank you for what you do, because it is important. Secondly, I would like to thank you for listening to our concerns. The main thing we'll talk about again is water, and we're talking about our rates that I'll confess, I saw the increases, the proposed increases, and thought, okay, we're going to raise everything in the normal 20 to 30% or 20 to 25%, like everything else is going up with the inflationary times that we live in. So I just didn't pay it much attention. However, then when we started seeing the bills after the August 1st implementation of the residential irrigation rate, and it going from $3.35 per 100 cubic feet to $6.76 per 100 cubic feet, with the proposed increase of it going to $10.42 in January, that definitely got my attention. So, as has been mentioned, we are a senior community. This will impact all the residents. At the initial increase that's in place now, we'll have to increase our dues $325. As we go forward into January, if that increase does come to fruition, then we'll be looking at in excess of $500 per occupant, per resident. So anyway, I would like to ask you guys to at least consider looking at some other alternative adjustment. Again, I understand we do have to have increases. Don't have a problem with that. That's just the life we live right now and with the situation that we find ourselves in. However, if it could be made to the commercial rate of $5.38, I think that's very palatable for all of us. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Director Levon Morton, and then...
Sir, I have a question, Mr. McDaniel. So I guess one thing I'm not familiar with, and this applies to all HOAs, POAs.
Yes, sir.
So I understand the amount of the water that's used in July, August, September. I mean, I think some places the POA is paying for the water that goes on the lawns and the flowers. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
But now let's get into November when, and I'm not arguing and I'm not trying to make a case to deny what you're saying. I mean, I honestly had some concerns about this tier when it first came out. I raised those concerns in June, and I've gathered some information on that since then. But so what do you think your water bill is going to look like in the month? Say, what would you use in the month of November as a POA? November, December, January?
It'll actually go down to the standard meter rates because we have the RPZs removed. So we completely shut everything off in November.
So you turn off the sprinkler like I do, right?
Absolutely. But what we're saying is currently we paid right at $18,000 this past year for water. Next year at the doubled rate, we'll be at 36.
Okay, so you're paying that basically April, May, June, for about 6 months, you're paying $18,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's where you get the doubling from. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Director Rigo.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to make a suggestion or, motion or whatever appropriate at a study session here in the not too distant future to have a specific conversation amongst the 7 of us, because of course we have 2 that aren't here as well, just about this particular tier and the irrigation system rate specifically, just so we can talk to that, as a single subject and with all of us present.
Well, and with the mayor's permission.
Let me, Director Good was next in the queue, and then we'll go to Director Levon Morton.
I'll yield, let him continue.
Okay, well, I just want to say, at the last meeting when this came up, I asked for, and I understand we're in the process of gathering this, the rates for Fayetteville, Springdale, Rogers, Bentonville, Conway, North Little Rock, and I also added to that Van Buren and Bartley. I wanted all of those so we could look and say, are we completely out of line with those other cities? Because I think there's actually a good chance that we are. And I want to look at that and decide, how we approach that. I think that we shouldn't be completely out of line with those other cities. I mean, you've got, in Greenwood, I'd ask for Greenwood as well. Greenwood does not buy water from us, but they have their own system. And that would be good information, and it would be good to have that when we have the study session. So,
absolutely.
Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the directors in the conversation. So I first wanted to ask Mark a question, but Director Morton actually answered it because I wasn't certain on the issue on Cisterna. I assumed it was a POA that paid into an area paying for water for irrigation. So I was just assuming that. So that's what that is. And I'm sure we have multiple of those. Okay, so I know that, like myself, I value my own personal property and the connecting property next to me because it keeps the value of my home as well as my neighbor's home when I care about my own property. So in doing that, it's kind of like the city. We have to maintain what we have and make sure our neighbors are taking care of what they have to maintain our value as a city. So you can maintain your property value and I can maintain my property value. But when we talk about not funding things like parks and fire and police, because those are citizen things. That same tax that citizens approved goes for that. And when we talk about not wanting or not spending money on parks and things that look good and make you feel pretty, I'm sorry. I water my grass not as much as I used to. That is a luxury. It's a luxury. We talk about some of the other things that we need to cut. I'm not telling you not to water your grass. I'm not telling you not to take care of your POA, but we need to realize when we talk about these rates, and I agree with Director Morton, let's make sure that the rates that we're charging are in line with other cities. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. We should definitely do that. But also realize that, irrigation is not the same as drinking water and water that you need for your household. That's all I have to say.
Director Rigo.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for maximum clarity, we've got the discussion for the irrigation rate tier already scheduled for the November 12th study session. So I hope the folks that are interested in that will come and participate. So thank you, and thanks for the reminder on that.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Dana, is it Bergstrom?
Good evening. Thank you for giving me a chance to get up here and speak. I'm new to the area. I could have moved to Seattle. I could have moved to Rhode Island. I could have moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, but my mom lives close by. So in May, I moved here and bought a house up in Vienna Hills. I had heard the cost of living was less in the South, and they had wonderful people. And I went to college nearby, so I decided to come back here. I was actually hoping to make this my retirement place. But after getting a couple of these bills and sitting here and listening tonight, this is my first meeting. I had no idea any of this was going on, or that all the issues with the parks. So this is really eye-opening for me. It's also really disheartening. Our first bill we got when we first moved in, it was like $671. And so we called, and it was a mistake, something about the sewage being marked wrong. So then the next month, I got a bill for $265 or $271. And then it's like, okay, there's just two of us in the house. There's no pool. We don't have any kids. We have a yard. We water our yard. Then the next month it was $265 again. And then the following month it was $456 for the same usage. I'm not here representing a homeowners association. I'm just representing me, a resident of Fort Smith. Only here in the last 9 months, we were in an apartment before then, our house. I work for the Fort Smith School District in an elementary school close by. My water went up 74%. 74%. I will never see a 74% raise on my paycheck in my life. I'm just saddened by all this. I want this to be an affordable place. And I hear you guys, you're working hard, you're trying to help the residents, everybody's putting in the time. I appreciate that. I thank you for that. But there's gotta be a better way. I really believe you wouldn't have intentionally put $200 extra on my bill. I mean, I thought it was a mistake. And I hope you guys see that this is a mistake. And when you make mistakes, we all make mistakes. When you make mistakes, just admit them and correct them. Listen to the people and correct this mistake. I have a senior citizen that live next to me. My neighbor came across the street and showed me his bill. He's probably 80. And it's like his bill went from $220 to $365. And I'm thinking, wow, you're lucky. Yours is only $365.
No. But I'm just going to say this. I'm the director for Ward 3. So would you stay after the meeting, or I can come down right now? I'll give you a card. I want to look at your bills, and I want to look at your neighbors' bills to see if there's a mistake. I have found bills in the city that had the wrong sewer rate, and that is especially true if you recently moved into town. Now, I would say on your neighbor that wouldn't apply, but there's no way one person or two people are going to have a $300 bill, even under the new rates. It's just not going to happen. So there's got to be something wrong.
My sewer rate is actually really good, and the person I spoke to in the office yesterday said, you better pray you keep that, because if you don't, it's really going to be bad.
Okay, so
but my
I
neighbor,
want to look at your water usage. There's a problem somewhere. It should not be $200.
it went up $200, and my neighbor across the street, his sewer bill was $225. I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Can't be
It should
right.
not be right. It cannot be right.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you for your time.
We appreciate you taking time to come be with us. Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Jerry Donaldson.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And got to say, not to brag, but if you want to use my water meter, we pay about $70 for our bill every month, and that includes water, sewer, and trash. So there's a way around it if you got a high bill. Anyway, so I want to give some credit where credit is due. And I look at the introduction letter that goes along with the document that we had to look at. And I focus on a couple of things just offhand that I see as pluses. One, objective number 2, number 5, and number 8 in Carl's letter, referring to first name Mr. Gefkin, excuse me. And he said one of the service objectives is transparent communication. Amen. One of the other service objectives is to put water and wastewater utilities in a good position. Amen. And number 8, as far as homelessness and affordable housing, again, I would concur with all of those things that I think are important to us that live in the city. In terms of the CD, the consent decree, we got to keep this. We got to keep it in front of ourselves. And I'm going to say something that people don't want to hear, but I think we got to hear that in terms of budgeting, there's always more we want than what we can afford. Most people, I should say. And you guys got to start, I believe that you folks need to start pumping for a sales tax increase. Now, I know it's not popular, and that's why if you have that responsibility for leading us forward here, I think you're going to have to bite the bullet and start to do the PR work, because Carl's numbers showed that there's no way to pay for the wastewater work that has to be done with rate increases. And somebody uses the term, it's a drop in the bucket for the rate increase. Well, when you look at, we haven't, as a city, borrowed the money that he intends and put in his plan, right? $300 million in 2025, $325 million in 2031. When you talk about financing that amount of borrowed money, it's got to come from somewhere to pay it's like a monthly mortgage, you're going to have to pay it, right? And you can't borrow it from another bucket unless you have a bucket to take it from. And the monthly water bills and sewer bills are not going to cover that. You've got to have sales tax. Reason being, because the sales tax is spreading it out over more folks than just the ones who have a connection to the water system. So like I say, people aren't going to like that, but that's the reality. We're stuck. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place with EPA, and we need to have you continue to bring that forward every month. Okay, let's see, moving on. On page 7, there's a mention of recidivism rates, and the goal is 100%. Now wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. The goal should be 0, so please check that out. And according to the recidivism is you don't want people that are in the prison system to return. If we had 100% recidivism, then everybody who's in prison would come back. We don't want that. So anyway, that's just probably just a typo.
And then the other thing is on page 33 to 42, the police objectives are specified. And just to take one of them as an example, well, let me back up a little bit. I've gotten input from some people without asking for it. And in different parts of town, they refer to, well, we don't call the police anymore. What? Why? Well, they don't call the police anymore because they don't come out. I said, really? Now, this is coming from 4 different people, okay? So I'm looking at these goals, and not to criticize our police, but look at the goal. It says, number 13, Field Operations Division will maintain considerable effort to reduce theft in the city for both residential theft as well as commercial theft. And then what do? Utilizing these methods, the Patrol Division seeks to reduce theft reports by 5%. Whatever you want to do. Theft report. Well, that's easy. Ditch the report or don't commit, don't report. So they took credit in 2023 of 14.7% reduction in residential and commercial thefts. Is that reality? Okay, lastly, I got to wind it up. As far as the wastewater projects, there's 2 that I would request that be considered. One is the ammonia violations at Mazar due to plant conditions. Are we giving Lance enough money to take care of that? And lastly, to take fluoride, you got to have a plan for taking fluoride out of the system. It's not in here. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Brian Westney.
All right. Good evening. Sherry, next time I'm going to need to go first because they're taking all of my ideas. So please bear with me. Hey, I think it's a little rich right now, and this is wasn't even on my notes, to hear about what's a luxury and what's not a luxury from this board. This city administration now, watering your lawn is a luxury, and owning a car is a luxury. Those are 2 things that this city administration has said in the Move Fort Smith, the energy plan, and now our water is now a luxury to be able to water our lawns. So, hey, George, Miss Nelda, her husband died earlier this year. She's a widow, single, $200 bill up to $400 something dollars now. And she didn't water her yard this month. So I'd like to get with you with her. Sure. Thank you. All right, so I talked to everybody. I think you guys all know that. You guys have all seen my emails. I talked to you guys individually. I've talked to Mr. Gefkin multiple times, just through emails, and I've actually talked to some of your directors at the lower level. I'm always asking, whose head needs to get cut off? Because somebody's head needs to get cut off. And I don't mean that literally, so, Chief Baker, please don't, do the use of force on me or something like that. But somebody's head does need to get cut off on all these problems the city's having. And I think there's a scapegoat. I think it's Carl. Now, I will tell you what, Mr. Gefkin, I was hoping he'd be here because I was actually going to compliment him. Every time I send him an email, he responds. And he responds professionally. Even when I'm not being so professional, he does respond to me professionally. So I wanted to give him a little bit of credit there. But, then I'm going, I've had, like I said, had a meeting with your directors and all that. Is it going to roll down to Lance? Is Lance going to get his head cut off over some of the stuff that's going on? He hasn't been in the position that long. I personally, after talking to him, think he's doing a pretty good job. But then I just started thinking, everyone wants Gefkin removed. He's not doing his job, but you allocate the money. You guys say where it goes. So you guys are at fault. You guys are the one not allocating funds from back in 1984. 1982, Mr. Settle, September 17th, and the last one said he was in kindergarten in 1982 when the administrative order came down. Well, I tell you what, Mr. Settle's been on the board since 2006. Mr. Good, you've been on the board since 2008. George, 2010.
Yes.
Mr. Martin, It's 2018. Levon, you were appointed in April, right, of 2019.
Right.
And Christina Rigo, this is your first term, okay? So, I mean, if anybody's had issues and could have fixed this, 2006, 2008, 2010. Now, I know it's a voting process, and I'm sure some of you guys, based on the way you vote now, I'm pretty sure how I know you voted back then, but you guys are at fault. So if somebody's head needs to get cut off, it's probably you guys. You guys are the ones that are not appropriating the money properly. George, you mentioned, you remember it was 250,000, 480,000, 250 million, 480 million, 6, 7 years, probably going to go up to $1 billion.
That's right.
Everybody, George, Christina, Neil, said we need to tighten our belts. We need to tighten our belts. And, Mr. Good, you're talking about cuts and, we're doing cuts, you just tried to give back the cuts that the park just did. You're like, I think we need to give it from the general fund. You're giving back the cuts that are already trying to be done. So that just doesn't make a lick of sense. And, I'm going to pick on you just a little bit, Mr. Good, is earlier in a town hall, you said, or in a meeting, you said the sins of our predecessors. You are the predecessor. You've been here since 2008. You can't blame it on anybody else. Now, jumping up on time here, the Bose building. You guys, Mr. Good, you said that the maintenance of the Bose building is getting, because some people said, why don't we make it a pickleball court? Why don't we do this? And you're like, well, the maintenance of it, we got to look at the cost of maintenance and all that. Well, at $4,000 a mile, what about the maintenance of the move Fort Smith? What about the maintenance of this potentially $40 million park that you guys are talking about putting together? What I want to know is, everybody needs to ask Lance what he needs. Because I know what he needs. He needs money. He has 6 projects that need to be done right now. And if you knew it, you're wrong because you're not giving him the money. And if you didn't know it, you're wrong because you should be giving him the money.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
I got 12 seconds. No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
My bad.
No, we appreciate you.
Yep.
Next, we have Barbara Conradi.
Director Good.
Thank you. Just want to comment on Mr. Welsing's comments. And I'm not being defensive whatsoever, Brian, and I don't take them as any kind of personal attacks. But yeah, I was absolutely right, and I stand by what I said about the comment that you took in part was I said that I was talking about how this got kicked down the can, how the can got kicked down the road. And I said something about, the sins of our predecessors or whatever you said that I said. I don't remember exactly what I said, but that's absolutely right because those decisions were made before I got on the board in 2008. And as I also spoke to at those community meetings, that I was one of the directors at that time, one of the 7 that had spoke to the fact multiple times that I'm listening to staff. Staff is telling us what we need to do. And at board meeting after board meeting, we had citizens come to meetings saying we can't afford this, we can't afford an increase in water rates. Just like me, and I've said it too, I'm not getting paid any more from FedEx than what I am, what I was before I got a little bitty raise. So no, I couldn't afford it either. But I saw the writing on the wall. I listened to staff, as a few other board members did too, but a couple of votes out of 7 won't get anything passed. And I hope you recognize that. So that's part of the issue. When we have citizens that pressure board members saying we can't afford this, we can't afford that, knowing that when we have a room full of folks looking at us dead in our face, wanting us to vote the way they want us to vote, that's generally what happens. And I've seen it year after year after year. But like you said, some of the other members, Mark has said, we have to make these tough decisions. And I was there to make those tough decisions. Also, it was brought up about passing the sales tax. I was even supportive of that when it got voted down. So when you want to point your finger at me, make sure that, we communicated, and I tell you, where we've been, at least my perspective, my perception of it. because it's just not my perception. I've walked through it. I've walked through and listened to board members change votes, as I have too. Because when you listen to citizens, when you get a better perspective of what's going on from board members, staff, and citizens, you can change your vote. But I've seen it. So, yeah, and I stand by the votes that I've made and the decisions that I've made. So thank you for pointing that out, that I was supportive of those increases.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Molly Echeverria.
While she's walking up there, if you guys could post your votes for maybe the last 20 years, so we could all look at what you guys did vote or not vote on, would be great for the citizens.
Those are actually available online on the city's website.
They are?
Yes, sir.
Amen.
All right, thank you all for hearing me tonight. So going a little off track of what I was going to initially talk about, so it's my understanding that Oak Cemetery is managed by the Parks Department. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So it was actually kind of frustrating to hear that, administration makes decisions about which projects to prioritize. Oak Cemetery needs help. We have plots out there. We have a loved one out there. And the roads going through Oak Cemetery are terrible. Some of the headstones, newer headstones that haven't been there for 100 years have shifted. And I understand that happens, but it's, and to get where our plots are buried, me and my husband and our loved one, there's this makeshift walkway to walk over this ravine, and it's totally unsafe. And I find it frustrating to hear that Carl Gefkin can choose which projects to arbitrarily decide what he's going to prioritize. I've lived here in Fort Smith. I moved here in 2016 from Colorado. And when I came here, I only visited once before I moved. And I didn't know enough about the community, what community I was moving into. But I was excited to see that, Fort Smith is historical. And what struck me about the city is that it has the population of a city, of a larger urban area, but it has the feel of a small town. And the rich historical history of Fort Smith inspired this to, it's my home now. And I definitely see, I get frustrated when I see the references to emulate cities like Fayetteville. I don't want that. I want Fort Smith to be Fort Smith. And I worry that trying to emulate these cities, we're going to lose the unique features of our Fort Smith community. The comparisons are a part of Move Fort Smith. That's disheartening. Our city is very distinct. And, as a concerned citizen, I want to remind everyone that we, the people, are the governing authority. We're your constituents. I voted for you. And certainly it's become increasingly apparent that the appointed or hired individuals within our city seem to have more control than what the citizens themselves have. This imbalance is very troubling. What bothers me is the constant push for new projects instead of maintaining what we already have. Like I mentioned, Oak Cemetery. It's a mess. So when I moved here, I didn't anticipate that this would become my permanent home, but of course, life changes. And now my family is here. My husband, my children, I'm raising them here in this community. And certainly I'm disappointed with how some of our funds are being spent. There's excessive expenditures and the lack of accountability. We have a city administrator who was brought in to address these long-standing issues, and they're unresolved. Instead of focusing on responsible budgeting, I see trips being made to Washington, D.C., and even to Italy. So finally, my final point is that it's clear that the future, the leadership that we're looking for, does not reside in Carl Gefkin.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Joe Elskin.
My apologies to Mr. Morton and Mr. Gefkin for saying that 5 minutes was necessary. I think 3 minutes is plenty. I want to say simply that there are no easy answers, and there are no right answers for the tension between keeping this city vibrant and inviting people in and keeping our kids here, and basically not spending money on those things so that you can maintain and repair our streets, our water, our sewer, everything. So I know that there aren't any easy answers. They're not simple, and I appreciate the work that you've done. And that you are working on. I listened to a webinar today about safe streets because I wanted to get somebody else's opinion. And it was really good, coming in from different places with different solutions, three different major approaches. I would gladly send you a copy of it, but it basically made a big difference in how I feel about what we can do to make things safe and to modernize our city in a way that is safe and attractive to people. I think you should ask Andy, because one of the things I learned is that when you widen Mazard, you increase the speed limits, and then you have more accidents. So, that's another way to save a little bit of money. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Joe. Madam Clerk.
Next, we have David Hartsfield.
Hey. Well, I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but I wanted to mention something about Matt talked about the cool Batmobile mower that he wants to buy for the Parks Department, or the Keep It Beautiful. I don't have a problem with that. I haven't looked at the budget to see if it would save more money to have the Parks Department or keep Fort Smith beautiful to maintain those intersections or the interchanges, or if you would have the private sector doing it. I'm for whichever option saves more money. My company, actually, we maintained the Rogers Avenue and 540 interchange for like 4 years, and it's a lot to do. Above and Beyond, I think, does the rest of them. And if you buy a mower, or if you buy a Batwing, you're probably gonna have to hire more employees. And if you have more employees and you've got more overhead, you've got higher cost. So when that comes up, my suggestion to the board would be to look and seeing maintaining that in a private sector versus the public, if it makes sense. Because I think generally speaking, the private sector usually does a better job of maintaining some of this stuff. Because you've taken all the money to put in flower beds, irrigation, and I just don't want to see that go to pot or not be well maintained, because like some of these people have said, we're spending more and more money on new parks and new this and new that. And I'd really like to see the things that we have maintained better. And of course we have the huge water issue, and I've had I have 2 or 3. We're one of the largest ground maintenance companies in Fort Smith, and we do a lot of HOAs. And like Ms. Kim here, she's a customer of mine, and we have 3 or 4 other HOAs. And they're calling me saying the same thing as I talk to my customers. They're very upset about these water bills. So just circling back, my point that I wanted to make was I would like to see the interchanges maintained, if it makes sense, by the private sector versus the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
That's all.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate all of you staying and hearing the concerns. If there's nothing else before the board, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.